All right, week 5 streamside fly tying. This past week we did the quill body Comparadun and kind of a rusty spinner. Everybody did pretty well in class. It is a tricky fly. We covered some new techniques, so we'll hop right in and get going here. Again, we did this in a 12. You can do this in really any size. I use a lot of 14s. 16s are good. Change the color to a yellow. You've got a nice sulfur. You can use it for Baetis and green. You could do any color you really want. So we'll hop in and we'll get our thread started here. Again, I like to leave a reminder to stop where my thread starts here. I don't want to go any further than that. I want to leave room for our hair wing and then a little bit of dubbing up front. Now what I'm going to do, this is a little different since we're doing a split tail in the back. I'm going to tie my thread in, and since we're doing a quill body, I want a nice flat underbody. So I'm going to constantly be untwisting my thread. You can kind of see that my thread is twisted, and I'm going to spin my bobbin counterclockwise, and if you watch it, it will flatten. And that just allows me to get a nice flat underbody. Now when I get here, normally I would cut this tag end off. I'm going to leave it. That's going to help me split my tails. So I'm going to run down to the bend, leave that tag. We're using micro fibbits here, so I'm going to grab, on these split tails, I like to grab 4. That way I get 2 on each side. That way if one breaks, it's not the end of the world, but it's also, I find it easier to split, and it kind of gives you a little more flotation because there's more surface area. So I'm going to set this on here. I'm going to measure it out about a hook length, but again, it's really up to you. I like them a little bit longer, makes it a little more stable on the water. I'm going to capture this with one wrap. It rolled on me. I'll make sure it's right on top. I'm going to take one more wrap here behind it just to make sure I'm all the way back. And now I'm going to tie this in again with a nice flat thread all the way up to where I started my thread. So I need to spin this counterclockwise to get it nice and flat. Get a nice even thread body right up to where I started my thread. Now I've got 4 micro fibbits just all bunched together. I'm going to take this tag end, and since we tied it right on top, I'm going to rotate my vise a little bit so I get a better angle, and I'm going to split these. I missed them. This is kind of a tricky thing to do. You can use your thumbnail to help split them to begin with, but I want 2 on either side. Like so. Now again, these are synthetic, so you can manhandle them. You can see I've got 2 on either side. This one needs to come out a little bit more. But now I'm going to take my thread, capture that tag end, and I'm going to wrap back down. A couple turns just to make sure it's captured in there. Then I can come in, cut off my tail, waist piece, and my tag end. And again, because we're doing a quill body, or in this case a magic quill, a synthetic quill body, we want a nice thin, smooth underbody. So I don't want to be going up and down the shank of the hook, because that's just going to add bulk. Again, there's a bunch of different ways to tie a Comparadun. We're doing the way I prefer to do it with a quill body. Again, it helps keep the bulk down. We're obviously not tying our wing in first. So I'm going to take our Magic Quill, which I've got here, with the stripe up. I'm going to rest that against the side of the hook here, capture it with a loose wrap, and start wrapping down back to the tails. And I'm going to get right up to where those tails are tied in. I'm going to you can kind of see how twisted that thread is, so I'm going to flatten it by spinning it counterclockwise if you're a right-handed tyer. And then I'm going to advance my thread back up to the front of the hook, again stopping every now and then to re-flatten my thread. Now I want to build a little bit of a taper, so I'm going to go back down the hook shank, but I'm not going to go all the way. I'm going to go about 3/4 of the body length, stop, untwist my thread, and then head back up, getting a nice smooth body. And I'm going to end right here where we started our thread, and we can wrap our body now. So these Magic Quills are adhesive backed, so I actually have the adhesive facing me, so that when I go to wrap this, that black line is on the back side and the adhesive is now down against the thread body. Our thread body is what dictates the color our fly is going to be. So again, if you want to make this a different bug, you just change your thread color and your hook size, and you now have really whatever mayfly you want, which is really cool. And these are a whole lot more durable than your standard stripped peacock quills. So I'm going to wrap that up in, believe it or not, these are slightly overlapping turns. Hard to tell because it's clear, but that black line gives you that segmentation. Capture that with 2 wraps, fold it back, wrap a few times in front, wrap back up to it. I can now cut my waist off, and we are almost done. It's a pretty simple fly. The hard part is now getting the wing on there. It's hard to tell, it's hard to describe how much hair you need to have enough, but we're using a fairly short, fairly fine deer hair. For class, we did not use what is marketed as Comparadun hair, really short. It's not as easy to hold on to, but we're going to want to stack it. I've got a clump here in my stacker because we want all these tips aligned. Now we want our tips facing forwards, so once I get them stacked, I'm going to pull them out of the stacker with the tips forwards, and then I'm going to grab these with my thread hand and then transfer back to my left hand, my material hand, and I'm going to make sure I don't have any butt ends in there. And I'm going to measure this out about a body length. Because we are reverse tying this essentially, or hollow tying this, I like to give myself a little bit more, but I'm going to place this right over my thread, I'm going to give it another counterclockwise turn, but I'm going to go past where it's flat, and it's actually going to cord it up again. And what that's going to do is, if I relieve tension, it's going to make my thread go backwards, which is going to help me not have my wing way up at the eye. So again, we'll counterclockwise spin past the flat and to the corded portion. I'm going to place my hair down, go straight up. I'm going to pinch my thread. I'm going to come under the hook and then back up again, and I'm going to pull slightly backwards, and I'm going to pull down. Now, you don't want to let go of this hair until you have a couple good sturdy turns on it. So I did 3 extra turns there. That should be enough to hold it. I've also kept all of my hair on top of the hook. If you notice it wants to roll on you, you can put a little wax on your thread. That always helps. But notice I'm still holding on to it. I'm going to come back to the eye of the hook with my thumb. I'm going to start pushing all this hair, creasing it backwards. And that's just going to help when I go to move my thread in front. So I'm going to now pull down on my thread. You can see my hook bouncing up and down. I'm going to pull down on the thread and lift up on the tips. I'm going to advance my thread just in front. And I apologize if I'm all fingers, but I'm going to then move my thread back to that hair again, and I'm going to create a little thread dam in front of it. Now, it's not going to be super pretty at this point. We got to get rid of all these butts, which is easier said than done, but I think this is a cleaner way to do a quill body. I'm going to come in as close as I can. All you see are my scissor handles there, but I'm going to cut all those butts off. And what that really does, it kind of looks like a wing case, and B, because this is deer hair, it's going to add a slight amount of flotation. Now, we want this hair 180 degrees around the hook, basically from the side of the hook all the way around to the other side. So I'm going to push this back with my thumb, lean around the camera and the vise and make sure it's where I want it. If it's not, I'm going to move it. And I'm going to pull these back again, put a couple extra wraps just to help prop it up. And then I'm going to take some dubbing. We're using the Fulling Mill Ultra Dry in a rusty spinner, kind of an orangey, rusty color. It does have some neat fluorescent fibers in it. If you hit this with a UV light, it does fluoresce, so it's got a little bit of attractor kind of fly stuff to it, but I'm going to use the tiniest little amount to start with. If you need to add more, you need to add more, but it's always easier to add than it is to take away. So I'm going to put a tiny little bit on there, get it stuck to my thread, slide it up. Again, you're going to come in and pull all those fibers back. I like to start at the eye and work my way back. Put a couple wraps right up against that hair, work my way down right to the eye, realizing I left my whip finish tool up on my tying desk, so hopefully I can do this with my fingers. Nope. Fair enough. I'll do a half hitch for now, just to make sure nothing gets too out of whack. So I did get a little close to the eye with that dubbing. And it's a down eye, so your thread's always going to want to fall off. If you have the opportunity to, you can rotate your fly. And again, I'm working in tight quarters here with a camera in front of me, so I'm going to try to do a little 3-turn whip finish. Easier said than done in this particular setup. Tighten that off. Trim my thread. Again, I don't want to cut anything but the thread, so I'm going to support my scissors with my finger. And then you can come in and really make sure this is 180 degrees around, pretty much straight up and down. And if I rotate that way, you can see, there we go, slide it over a little bit. You get a nice wing. Again, 180 degrees. I like the little spiky dubbing up front. You can use thread, you can use different dubbings. I like this ultra dry. It's got a little spike to it. But that is your quill body Comparadun. And this one's a 12. Again, 14s are probably the one that I use the most. But good fun fly to tie, and if you can do it, you know you've got some pretty good tying skills, because it's not super easy working with hair. So, all right.